Well, Nzinga, before we get there, Tumelo Madlala been on the stand since the resumption of this trial on Monday for 5 days now. He has been giving testimony, has been under cross-examination and re-examined by the defense and the state in this particular matter. Tumelo Madlala, visibly emotional after wrapping up inside court. He was excused from the court just a couple of moments ago after giving days of testimony and also being cross-examined, grilled by the defense on what he told this court. What we've heard in Nzinga over the past couple of days and the previous bout of sittings that we had with Tumelo Madlala, talking about his relationship with Senzo Meyiwa, his best friend, what on his version he believes took place on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, contending, remaining adamant that there were intruders that entered the house on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, but still at this point of him wrapping up that cross-examination and re-examination as well, he still says he does not know who exactly pulled the trigger. As far as he was concerned, he did everything that he could, in the moment, he says, of confusion at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, saying they'd been caught by surprise by what had taken place on that day. They tried to rush Senzo Meyiwa to the hospital. He also described going to the hospital and what they found there, how he says he became emotional. And when he saw Senzo Meyiwa where he had been shot, he said, you would recall this happened some time ago, saying that, he asked his friend, is this what you were calling me here for? So much has happened in terms of, the version that Madlala gives.
We apologize for that cut there. We'll try and get Chriselda Lewis back a little bit later on to tell us what exactly happened at that court proceedings today. Let's go to the Eastern Cape. Okay, Chriselda, you're back. You broke up a little bit there, but please continue just explaining to us what happened.
All right, Nzinga, I apologize. I really don't know what happened in that break of transmission there, but what I was indicating is that what we've also seen here in court relates to Tumelo Madlala's, a character also coming under scrutiny. He was described as Senzo Meyiwa's best friend, and you would know that he participated in a Netflix documentary. That issue coming up several times, that documentary airing just days before the start of this trial. Saying that he sold the pictures of personal pictures of himself and his late best friend. His argument has been that he would not have done that family, but the defense also, grilling into him, asking him if he had shared any of that money. Why didn't he share it with the Senzo Meyiwa's family, not even the little child at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, knowing that Meyiwa had been a breadwinner of the family. His character, and also, a lot of questions about how he described what happened inside the house. While Madlala maintains he does not know who pulled the trigger, what we do know is that we're expecting we may have some kind of knowledge of who the next witness is. We're not allowed to say who that witness will be, because since the start of this trial, you would recall, issues of safety have been raised pertaining to witnesses as well as some of the legal counsel in this particular matter. But also, we've also seen, the controversial docket 375. This particular case has really raised eyebrows since the beginning, relating to two dockets in this particular matter. Docket 636, which implicates and says that the men that are currently on trial, the 5 men who are currently on trial, should be facing the rap over the death of Senzo Meyiwa. And there's another controversial docket, 375, which the prosecutorial authority has not yet made a decision on. You would recall the last correspondence that we had indicated to them saying that they will make a decision based on the credibility and at the end of this current trial that is taking place. At some point, Madlala also accused of testifying to ensure that, he does not go down, if I may, in that docket 375, which the prosecutorial authority is yet to make a decision on. We've also heard during the course of, this particular testimony of Madlala, how certain individuals had gone to Kelly Khumalo at the Malberton home after the incident had taken place, how police seemingly came to the Malberton home that she shared with Senzo Meyiwa, and after a certain telephone call had been made, those police had left that particular crime scene. The conduct in which police also had handled themselves as first responders to that particular scene is also something that came under great scrutiny, in that Madlala concedes also in this court that there were no blood tests taken on them. Remember that the defense has long contended that the scene itself had been tampered with, the first responders to the scene did not respond on time, and that something happened at the scene before they got there, that perhaps the scene had been tampered with, and that certain items may have been removed from the scene. And that was also part of the sharp focus that we also saw during the part of Madlala's testimony, in that the defense tried to ask him how much alcohol do they consume on that day, because you would recall when Madlala had arrived in Johannesburg at the invitation of Senzo Meyiwa, their first stop was the bottle store. They'd gone then to Kelly Khumalo's mother's home and began drinking there. So the defense really tried to point to individuals who may have been drunk at the time inside the house, and that Madlala, could not have been able to identify accused number 2, who he says Senzo Meyiwa had pinned against the wall, that was part of the other bombshells that were dropped during his testimony, in which he had pointed out to accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, as the man who he says was one of the intruders inside the house at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. So that was also one of the issues that came up pertaining to the alleged tampering of evidence, exhibits shown inside this court, in which there were some beer cans that had been shown, and the defense trying to say that the exhibits that were shown inside court, or the photographs that were taken at the crime scene, do not give a true depiction of exactly how the scene was on that particular day. It had been tampered with, it had been cleaned up. Madlala also responds by saying he doesn't know what happened to the other cans. While the other cans were inside the refrigerator, he says he doesn't know what happened to the other cans because they had left the crime scene and taken Senzo Meyiwa to hospital. The post-mortem, just finally, Nzinga, I know that we're trying to get through as many points as possible. The post-mortem also coming under scrutiny, in that you would recall Madlala had also told this court that the person who could have possibly shot Senzo Meyiwa might have been standing behind him. The post-mortem report, the doctor's report, says that Senzo Meyiwa was shot in the front, right at this particular point where I'm pointing, and that was at close range, and that would indicate that this was someone that was standing in front of him. So that was some of the contradictions that the defense tried to point to. We also heard from witness statements from neighbors who said that they heard some loud commotion coming from the Meyiwa home before the gunshot had gone off. One of the neighbors, in fact, Mr. Ngache, who says he peeped through the window after he thought there was a party that was going on due to the loud noise, and he had seen someone wearing a white T-shirt standing at the door near the window, and that person is believed to have been Senzo Meyiwa, as per the description of what Madlala says the Meyiwa was wearing on that particular day. Also another statement from his brother, Senzo Meyiwa's brother-in-law, who says that Madlala is the one who had told him that there had been a fight inside the house between Zandi Khumalo, who is Kelly Khumalo's sister, and her boyfriend, and that Senzo Meyiwa had tried to intervene in that fight that was taking place between Zandi Khumalo and her boyfriend. And Madlala basically saying that's all a lie, according to his version and what he maintained until he left the box. This is it afternoon or morning still? Well, this afternoon. He maintains there were intruders that came inside that house, one carrying a firearm. They demanded cell phones and money. And at some point, Senzo Meyiwa was shot. And when he heard this was after he had fled. He says on his version, when he had fled to the bedroom, and at some point, Mtokozi Sitwala, who was inside the house as well, managed to open the door for him with a spoon because he could not open the door. And that's when he went out and had seen Senzo Meyiwa basically lying in the lounge area. He had been shot. We heard quite a lot of how he had found his best friend. We also heard about a fractured relationship between the Meyiwa family as well as Madlala, which seemed to have turned sour after Meyiwa had died. The defense suggesting that that relationship had gone sour because the Meyiwas believed that Madlala was not telling the truth about what had taken place on the day that Meyiwa was killed. But Nzinga, so many other points to get through. I'm really hoping that I've touched on most of them, but certainly very emotional. When Madlala had left the court, he was crying in the court corridor, and also warned that he should not be participating, in any interactions with perhaps any of the individuals who still might be called before this court to come and testify. But we're expecting the next witness to take the stand on Monday. I'm not at liberty to say who that person is at this particular stage, but it should be another round or another couple of days of very interesting testimony.